Rockefeller. The Rockefellers made their fortune through Standard Oil, at one point controlling over 90% of US oil production. John D. Rockefeller became the richest American in history. They funneled their wealth into banks, universities, and foundations. Even today, the family name echoes through every elite institution in America. Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilts built an empire on shipping and railroads. Cornelius the Commodore Vanderbilt was the original tycoon. By the Gilded Age, they were throwing parties in mansions that would give the Great Gatsby a run for his money. However, their wealth eventually faded, but their name remains tied to legacy, excess, and New York real estate. Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie revolutionized steel and became one of the richest men alive. Then he gave most of it away. He funded libraries, universities, and the arts. His name still lives through philanthropy, but unlike some old money families, the Carnegies didn't stay relevant for the generations after he passed. Morgan. J.P. Morgan was the banker who backed America. He financed railroads, consolidated industries, and even bailed out the federal government during a crisis. The House of Morgan became a financial dynasty, and their influence shaped Wall Street for over a century. DuPont. The DuPont started with gunpowder and grew into a chemical empire. From explosives to nylon to Teflon, they touched every corner of modern industry. Their family tree is tangled, their estate is massive, and their influence is long-lasting, even with all their scandals. Astor. John Jacob Astor got rich off fur trading, then pivoted to New York real estate. He died the richest man in America, and his descendants sat atop the American social pyramid for over a century. The Astor name became synonymous with being in the American wealthy elite. Ford. Henry Ford didn't invent the car, but he made it a symbol of American industry. The assembly line changed the world. His descendants turned Ford into one of the biggest family-owned businesses in history, and they kept political and philanthropic clout in Detroit and beyond. Hearst. William Randolph Hearst built a media empire so powerful it basically invented yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is using super catchy headlines that's meant to make you feel emotional, which leads to your engagement. Pretty much clickbait before clickbait. He inspired Citizen Kane and owned the biggest mansion in America. His descendants still run parts of Hearst Communications, one of the largest media groups in the world. Kennedy. Joseph Kennedy made his fortune in booze and Wall Street before grooming his sons for power. And it worked. John became president, Bobby became a legend, and Ted became one of the most influential senators in US history. The Kennedy mystique is equal parts glamour and also tragedy. In fact, there's something called the Kennedy curse because of all the tragic deaths in their family. Bush. From Yale to oil to the CIA, the Bush family mastered the art of establishment ascent. 2 presidents, 2 wars, and 1 dynasty. It's less flashy than the Kennedys, but every bit as entrenched. Rothschild. The Rothschilds are the reason the term international banking dynasty even exists. Meyer Amschel Rothschild set it all up in Frankfurt in the 1700s. He sent his 5 sons to London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, and 1 stayed in Frankfurt, each running a branch of the family firm. They became the preferred bankers to kings and emperors, financing wars and nation building, all while staying in the shadows. Their low public profile and immense wealth equals conspiracy theory magnet. People project all sorts of world domination myths onto them, which ironically proves how powerful their brand still is. Modern Rothschilds are quieter, but they're still rich, still connected, and still in finance. They're just not in your face about it, and that's on purpose. Medici. The Medici family ruled Florence by combining banking, politics, and art. They funded greats like Michelangelo and Da Vinci. They produced popes, queens, and one of the most culturally dominant dynasties in Western history. Habsburg. The Habsburgs were Europe's royal overlords for centuries. Their empire stretched from Austria to Spain to the Americas. They used marriage like a military tactic and became infamous for their inbreeding, which led to their collapse. But their power was unmatched in early modern Europe. Windsor. The House of Windsor isn't just a royal family, it's a branding mastermind. They originally went by a different name, but it was German, and World War I made German a bad look in Britain. So they rebranded. Their wealth is tied up in land, lots of land. They have the Crown Estate, Duchy of Lancaster, Duchy of Cornwall, multi-billion-dollar portfolios. But here's the catch. none of it is technically owned. It's just held in trust for the nation, while they live like billionaires. They've weathered scandal after scandal. Divorce, Princess Diana, Prince Andrew, Harry and Meghan, yet somehow the machine rolls on. Queen Elizabeth II held it together for 70 years. Charles III is now the brand's aging caretaker, and William is positioned as next up. Their reign over the country might be symbolic, but that doesn't take away from their generational real estate, diplomatic immunity, and cultural dominance. It's soft power, but it's been sharpened over a century. Bourbon. The Bourbons ruled France, Spain, and Naples. Louis XIV built Versailles. Louis XVI lost his head. The dynasty was defined by opulence, collapse, and comeback. A few Bourbon branches still exist today, but they're mostly in exile. Mellon. The Mellons made money in banking, oil, and steel. Andrew Mellon served as Treasury Secretary and helped shape United States tax policy. The family later poured wealth into philanthropy, art, and elite institutions like Carnegie Mellon University. Firestone. Harvey Firestone founded the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company and quickly locked in a generational partnership with Ford. Their families intermarried, cementing their dynasty. Firestone wealth spread into racing, land, and politics. Whitney. The Whitneys were American elites before that was even a thing. They had banking money, railroad money, and art world money. William Collins Whitney helped modernize the United States Navy and served as Secretary of the Navy under Grover Cleveland. Gertrude Vanderbilt Whitney, yes, from the Vanderbilt family who married into the Whitneys, founded the Whitney Museum of American Art. They were also heavy into thoroughbred horse racing, things like the Kentucky Derby. They played the marriage game hard, tying into the Harrimans, Roosevelts, and even British nobility. Less flashy than the Rockefellers or Hearsts, but they were embedded in every power corridor: finance, politics, culture. They're just some pure East Coast legacy money. Harriman. Railroads made the Harrimans rich. E.H. Harriman was a titan of transportation. His son, Averell, became a major player in Cold War politics and diplomacy. They turned their wealth directly into power. Tudor. The Tudors ruled England from Henry VII to Elizabeth I. Henry VIII had 6 wives and launched the English Reformation. Elizabeth made England a naval power. Their dynasty lasted less than 120 years, but it did change world history. Stewart. The Stewart line ruled Scotland, then England, and Ireland. They dealt with rebellion, civil war, and exile. They're famous for the Jacobite risings and the romantic legacy of Bonnie Prince Charlie. Eventually, they were replaced by the House of Hanover. Saud. The House of Saud is oil royalty, literally. The dynasty began in the 18th century, but gained global power in 1938, when oil was discovered under their sand. By 1945, the US and Saudi Arabia had cut a deal: oil for protection. They control Saudi Aramco, one of the most valuable companies on earth. Currently, it's worth $1.6 trillion. Meanwhile, their sovereign wealth fund is reshaping global business. They own chunks of Uber, Lucid Motors, SoftBank, the Live Golf League, and much more. The family has thousands of members, but a select few wield real power. The current ruler, King Salman, and his son, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, have turned the kingdom into a tech-forward, investor-friendly place. Koch. Fred Koch made oil refining tech. His sons Charles and David turned Koch Industries into one of the largest private companies in the world. And they quietly became some of the most influential political donors in US history. Mars. Mars Inc. is one of the most successful family-owned companies in American history, and it's one of the most secretive. It was started by Frank Mars in the 1910s, and it blew up with Milky Way, M&Ms, Snickers, and later pet care like Pedigree and Banfield. It's all privately held, passed down through bloodlines, with zero interest in media attention. They own more than just candy. They've gobbled up food brands, pet hospitals, and biotech ventures. The Mars family could walk past you in the street in hoodies and no one would notice, because they want it that way. Ultra rich, ultra low key, ultra controlled. The old money playbook executed perfectly. Duke. James Duke made a fortune in tobacco and hydroelectric power. He endowed Duke University, and his family became Southern United States elites. The Duke Endowment still funds hospitals, schools, and charities across the Southeast. Boone. Descendants of frontier legend Daniel Boone got rich drilling oil in Texas and Oklahoma. They were early wildcatters, which means risk-taking oil hunters who mixed cowboy grit with big money ambition. It's pretty much old money with a Wild West twist.